Karen ordered me to take down my son's welcome home banner within 24 hours. But when I helped organize a neighborhood parade with 50 vehicles and more than 200 people chanting his name, she learned she had just unified an entire military community against her. My name is Alex, and I am a retired Master Sergeant of the United States Marine Corps. I served for 22 years before retiring and settling in Colorado Springs. Colorado, one of the most military-supportive cities in the country. My son, Jackson, chose to follow the same path and enlisted in the Army immediately after graduating high school. He had just completed his second deployment to the Middle East. 15 months of dangerous duty that left me lying awake most nights. When I learned he was finally coming home, I did exactly what any proud father would do. I hung a banner across my garage that read, "Welcome home, Jackson. Thank you for your service." What Karen failed to understand when she went after that banner was that she was not simply confronting me. She was insulting every military family living in a neighborhood full of veterans. I live in Liberty Pines, a subdivision built in 2014 on the east side of Colorado Springs, about 20 minutes from Fort Carson. Roughly 60% of the neighborhood is made up of military families, active duty soldiers, veterans, and retirees. We chose this area deliberately because people here understand deployments, long absences, and the sacrifices that come with military life. The HOA existed mainly to manage basic services like snow removal and lawn care. For 6 years, it ran quietly and reasonably. No one bothered anyone else, and the board stayed out of residents' personal lives. Then Karen moved in 10 months ago. She had golden blonde hair and always dressed like she was headed into a corporate meeting. She ran for the HOA board immediately and won because most residents didn't bother voting. Within 2 months, she was president. Within 4 months, she began her mission to eliminate what she called clutter and visual pollution. Her targets became decorations, flags, signs, and banners. She sent violation notices to families whose holiday decorations stayed up past deadlines she invented. She fined homeowners for American flags she said were too large. She demanded the removal of sports flags, college banners, and yard signs supporting local businesses. People complained privately, but most complied just to avoid the hassle. Then Jackson's deployment ended. I got the call on a Tuesday that his unit was rotating back stateside. He would be home in Colorado Springs 12 days later. I was overwhelmed with relief. 15 months of worrying every time the news mentioned his region. 15 months of limited communication and constant fear. It was finally over. That Wednesday, I went to a local print shop and ordered a banner, 8 feet wide, 3 feet tall, white background with red and blue lettering. "Welcome home, Jackson. Thank you for your service." At the bottom, I added his rank and unit. Specialist Jackson Miller, 10th Mountain Division. I hung it across my garage door Thursday morning. It looked perfect. Neighbors stopped by throughout the day to congratulate me and share their excitement. Carl, a retired Air Force colonel, told me it was one of the nicest welcome home banners he had ever seen. By Thursday afternoon, a violation notice appeared on my door. Unauthorized banner displayed on residential property. Remove within 24 hours or fines will be assessed. Banners, signs, and temporary decorations violate Section 8 of Community Standards. I read it twice, then pulled out the HOA covenants. Section 8 addressed permanent signage and advertising. It banned business signs, unapproved for sale signs, and political signs outside election periods. There was nothing about temporary banners celebrating family milestones. I called Karen immediately. "Karen, I received your notice about my son's banner. There is no rule prohibiting it. Section 8 bans signs and banners. Your banner qualifies. Section 8 covers permanent advertising. This is a temporary decoration welcoming my son home from deployment. It is a visual distraction and does not align with neighborhood aesthetics. Remove it by tomorrow or you'll be fined $500. My son has been deployed in a combat zone for 15 months. That banner stays up until he comes home, and probably a few days after. I am not taking it down. Then you'll be fined. This is your final warning. Alex." She hung up before I could respond. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the banner through the window. Jackson had missed birthdays, holidays, and family milestones. He had lived under constant danger, doing work most people will never understand. And Karen wanted his welcome home banner removed because she didn't like how it looked. I made my decision right then. If Karen wanted to turn this into a battle over a banner, I would make sure the entire neighborhood knew exactly who Jackson was and what he had sacrificed. Period. I started with my closest neighbors. I knocked on doors and explained what was happening. Every single person was furious. Carl was livid. She wants you to take down a welcome home banner for your son? That's disgraceful. 3 houses down, Patricia, whose husband was currently deployed with the 4th Infantry Division, started crying. When my husband comes home, I want to hang a banner too. Is she going to find me as well? Marcus, a young Army captain across the street, told me he would help however he could. We take care of our own, sir. Just say the word. That night, I posted in the Liberty Pines Facebook group. I explained the situation, shared a photo of Jackson in uniform, talked about his deployment, and asked neighbors to show their support with their own welcome home displays. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within 2 hours, more than 100 comments poured in. Veterans shared deployment stories. Active duty families expressed solidarity. Civilian neighbors said they were disgusted by Karen's demand and wanted to help. By Friday morning, 12 homes had hung welcome home signs, American flags, or yellow ribbons. By Friday afternoon, there were 30. Karen issued violation notices to every one of them. That's when everything changed. Carl knocked on my door Friday evening. Alex, emergency meeting at my place in an hour. Tell everyone who cares. More than 40 people showed up, veterans from every branch, active duty soldiers, and supportive neighbors. We packed his living room and backyard discussing next steps. Karen is targeting military families. Carl said, she doesn't respect the sacrifices our kids make. Only her version of how things should look. Marcus stood up. We need a statement she can't ignore. Patricia spoke next. What if we organize a welcome home parade for Jackson? Line the streets with cars, flags, and people when he arrives. Show her this neighborhood stands behind its military families. The room erupted in agreement. Over the next week, planning began immediately. Marcus coordinated with soldiers from Fort Carson. Carl reached out to veteran organizations in Colorado Springs. Patricia organized the civilian families. We printed flyers, posted across social media, and personally invited everyone we knew. The plan was straightforward. When Jackson arrived home on Saturday afternoon, the neighborhood would come together for a welcome home parade in his honor. Karen found out about it and sent me a certified letter on Wednesday. Unauthorized parade or gathering in violation of HOA peaceful enjoyment standards. Any large gathering requires board approval 30 days in advance. Cancel immediately or face fines and legal action. I called her as soon as I read it. Karen, you cannot prohibit people from gathering to welcome home a soldier. I absolutely can and will. This is a residential neighborhood, not a parade route. Cancel it or I will call the police. Call them, I replied. I have already spoken with the Colorado Springs Police Department community liaison. They think it's a great idea and even offer to have a patrol car participate. That part was true. Earlier in the week, I had contacted the police to ensure we weren't violating any city ordinances. They were enthusiastic, supportive, and appreciative of what we were doing. Karen hung up without saying another word. Saturday finally arrived. Jackson's flight landed at 2 p.m., and he would be home by 3:30. My wife, Sarah, and I picked him up from the airport. He looked exhausted but healthy, and watching him walk through those airport doors was one of the greatest moments of my life. On the drive back to Liberty Pines, I told him about the banner, Karen's threats, and what the neighborhood had planned. He was quiet for a moment, then said softly, Dad, you didn't have to do all this. Yes, I did, I said. You earned it, and this neighborhood needed to remind itself what really matters. When we turned onto our street, Jackson saw it. The entire neighborhood was lined with people. More than 200 residents stood along the sidewalks holding American flags, welcome home signs, and yellow ribbons. 50 cars were parked along the route, many decorated with streamers and banners. A police patrol car sat at the entrance with its lights flashing. Someone had brought a portable speaker blasting patriotic music. As we drove slowly down the street, people cheered, clapped, and chanted, "Welcome home, Jackson." Children waved flags. Veterans stood at attention and saluted. It was overwhelming. Jackson had tears running down his face. "So did I, period." We pulled into the driveway, and the crowd surrounded us. People shook Jackson's hand, thanked him for his service, hugged him, and took photos. It went on for more than an hour, and Jackson handled it with humility and quiet strength. Karen was nowhere to be seen, but I noticed her watching from her front window, 3 houses down, arms crossed, face twisted with anger. The following Tuesday, an emergency HOA meeting was called. Karen scheduled it to address unauthorized gatherings and ongoing violations of community standards. More than 150 people showed up. The meeting room overflowed, with residents packed in the hallways and standing outside the building. Karen sat at the front table with 3 other board members, Richard, Linda, and Stephen. All 3 looked visibly uncomfortable. Karen opened the meeting. "We are here to address the unauthorized parade that occurred on Saturday, as well as a continued violation of sign and banner restrictions." Carl stood up immediately. "Point of order. Before anything else, I want to know why this board is targeting military families." The room exploded in applause. Karen tried to respond, but Carl continued. "Over the past 2 weeks, you have fined 32 families for welcome home decorations, American flags, and military-related displays. 31 of those families include active duty service members or veterans. That is not coincidence. That is discrimination. I enforce HOA rules equally," Karen said sharply. "No, you don't," Marcus interrupted, standing in his Army uniform. "I reviewed every violation notice you issued in the last 6 months. 78% targeted military families. You fine people for American flags, welcome home banners, and unit insignia on mailboxes, but you never find anyone for college flags, sports decorations, or holiday displays left up for months." He dropped a stack of papers on the table. "These are the violation notices. The pattern is undeniable." Richard picked them up and started reading. His face drained of color. He looked directly at Karen. "Is this accurate?" Karen stayed silent. Linda leaned over and read several notices. "Karen, you fine someone for displaying a Marine Corps flag. That is protected speech. We have size rules." Karen snapped defensively. "The flag was a standard 3x5. Linda replied. "There is no size restriction in our covenants." Stephen turned toward Karen. "Why are you doing this?" "I'm enforcing community standards," Karen said, but the confidence was gone from her voice. Patricia stood up. "My husband is deployed right now. When he comes home in 3 months, I will put up a banner just like Alex did. Are you going to fine me too?" "There is no rule," Patricia shouted. "You are making this up because you don't respect military families." The room erupted. People shouted their own stories, shared experiences of Karen's targeting, and demanded accountability. Richard stood and banged the gavel. "Everyone, please. Let's handle this properly." He turned to the board. "I move that we rescind all violations related to welcome home banners, American flags, and military-related decorations. These displays do not violate any legitimate covenant and represent protected expressions of support." Seconded, Linda and Stephen said at the same time. "All in favor?" Richard asked. 3 hands went up. Karen did not raise hers. "Motion passes," Richard said. He then turned to Karen. "We also need to address your conduct as president. You have issued violations without board approval and targeted specific residents. That cannot continue." Karen stood abruptly. "I resign." She grabbed her belongings and walked out. The room erupted in cheers. Richard was elected president that night. His first action was rescinding every fine Karen had issued related to military decorations. His second was a formal declaration that Liberty Pines proudly supports its military families and welcomes reasonable patriotic displays. The neighborhood celebrated. My banner stayed up for 2 more weeks without a single complaint. Other families added their own welcome home signs, and Liberty Pines quickly became known as one of the most military-supportive neighborhoods in Colorado Springs. Jackson slowly adjusted to civilian life. He began classes at the University of Colorado using his GI Bill. Sometimes he talked with me about his deployment, and I can see both pride and the weight of it in his eyes. Karen moved out within 6 weeks. She sold her home to a retired Navy family, who immediately hung a welcome home banner for their daughter returning from overseas deployment. A month after Jackson came home, the neighborhood held a barbecue. Over 200 people attended, and it became an annual tradition called the Liberty Pines Welcome Home Celebration. Every year we honor those deployed, those returning, and those who have served. I kept the banner. It's folded neatly in my garage, waiting for the day I get to Jackson when he has a home and family of his own. I want him to remember that his service mattered, that his community stood with him, and that sometimes doing the right thing means being loud instead of quiet. If you've ever been told to remove decorations honoring a service member or dealt with an HOA that disrespected military families, share your story. Send this to anyone who needs a reminder that communities are strongest when they stand together against petty authority. Sometimes a simple banner becomes a rallying cry for an entire community.